Good morning, Bardstown and Nelson County, and welcome to another edition of Bradford and Brooks. Jim Brooks and Margie Bradford with you on this overcast Wednesday morning. Margie, we had a little thunder rolling through last night. I don't know, sometime a little before midnight. I know my dog was in my lap for a while.
He wasn't on your head?
No, I wasn't in bed yet, or else he would have been. Well, Margie, we are less than a week away from the primary election, and actually you don't have to wait till Tuesday to next Tuesday to cast your vote.
No, you do not. You can. There's no excuses required. Early in-person voting at the Nelson County Library tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday. And that is from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So you can, at your leisure, go and get your voting done and get that out of the way, and make sure that there's no storm to hold you up on voting day, or an unexpected visitor or something like that.
Right.
Yes. So I know that there's not a lot of different choices. And some people may not think it's important, but it really is important to come out and show your support for your candidate. So.
Well, I really think the main race in this election, of course, is the Republican primary for state representative. The incumbent, Candy Massaroni, versus Andy Stone, the challenger. Andy, of course, longtime city school board member. So that's to me, that's really the only race to watch.
Right.
I mean, of course, we'll have every party gets to vote for their candidate for president. I think it's pretty much a given who the candidates are going to be in the presidential race, and then candidates for second and fourth congressional district.
And then it'll be interesting also to see how many are vote uncommitted and vote, for a fringe candidate, so to speak. But some, or they can just vote uncommitted. So I think that'll be interesting and it might give some indications about how their general.
Well, I thought about that too in a couple of the races, voting uncommitted because I didn't like the choices. But
a lot of people are doing that.
Anyway, we will talk about that next Wednesday.
Yes, we will.
We'll slice and dice and cuss and discuss the primary election. Though there's not a lot of, there won't be too many races to really talk about.
No.
But that's never stopped us before.
No, no, it has not.
All right, again, early voting begins tomorrow through Saturday, 8 to 4 p.m. at the main branch of the Nelson County Public Library.
Right, exactly.
And then on Election Day, you can go to your precinct, or you can go to the voting center, which is also going to be at the public library. So I'm going to try to get in and vote early, Margie. How about you?
I'm always an early voter if I can get in there.
Well, of course, you just live a stone's throw from the library.
Absolutely. So. I mean, I'm always worried that something will happen and get between me and getting to the polls, and I never miss a vote. Well,
I appreciate the opportunity to have early voting too. I think that means a lot.
I think it does because everybody's schedule's different,
right?
And particularly people who would have to wait and come after work and have to stand in line, maybe,
right?
Or risk not getting there at all. It gives them an opportunity to do that on Saturday.
Right, and so a tip of the hat to Jeanette Sidebottom and the crew over at the Nelson County Clerk's Office, because they're the good folks that have to make all this happen every election season, and actually twice this year for the primary and then again for the general election in November.
And they make it look easy.
No, they sure do. And just a reminder that I know there's been a lot of discussion about school choice. That amendment won't be on the primary ballot. It'll be in November. So if you go to the polls and you're looking for it, it won't be there until we go back to the polls in November.
Right.
All right. Well, Margie, I'll let you introduce. We have a very special studio guest who's joined us and who was recently a speaker at the Nelson Fiscal Court meeting and really opened a lot of eyes about the topic and of domestic violence. So, Margie, I'll let you make our introduction.
All right. Well, we're privileged to have with us today Shonna Shackles, and Shonna is Director of Outreach for Springhaven Domestic Violence Program. And I forgot what I was going to say. That doesn't happen all that often. No, I originally, what sparked my interest was our interview with our jailer. Mm-hmm. And he was talking, we were talking about the different programs. Right. And he told us that you headed up a domestic violence program there, and how helpful that was. And so hence the invitation for you to come and talk about that program.
Thank you.
And also about the other many duties you do in your job.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. And again, I'm Shonna Sheckles, and I am the Director of Outreach Services for Springhaven Domestic Violence Program. Springhaven is the state-certified shelter program for the Central Kentucky area. We service the Lincoln Trail Ad District and Nelson, Washington, Marion, LaRue, Breck, Meade, Grayson, and there's one more that I can't even think of. But we provide domestic violence services for victims of domestic violence in this area. And so when Justin Hall was running for jailer, I had asked him, could we possibly start a domestic violence group for the females that are in the jail, because they don't have a lot of things that they can do. Mm-hmm. They're not trustees or anything like that. And, men and women can't be together at the jail. So they spend a lot of time in their cells with not anything to do. Time just keeps going and they don't have anything to do. Prior to Justin Bucksnellen, I'd spoke to him, and we had talked about it, but it really did not get off the ground. I went up a couple of times, and it just really did not get off the ground. But Justin assured me that if he became the jailer, then I could come with my domestic violence program to the jail. And so hats off to him, because he was true to his word. And shortly after he was brought into office, then the program began. So I go every other Wednesday to the jail, unless they have some things going on. And it's been some Wednesdays that I have not been able, to be there because they had other things going, or I might have had another commitment at that time. Mm-hmm. But I believe that if you are going to offer a support group for anyone, that it needs to be on a regular basis, so that people can become comfortable with the facilitator, so that the facilitator can be comfortable with them, to get to know them and know what their plight actually is, and what has happened, what type of trauma that has happened to them due to domestic violence. So it's open to all of the ladies that are currently incarcerated in the jail. They make the decision whether they want to come to the group or not. The group lasts for 60 minutes. It's 1 hour. Anything past 1 hour in counseling or education, you lose people's attention, because the brain can only absorb so much, and especially on trauma issues. And domestic violence is definitely a form of trauma.
Well, Shonna, you shared with fiscal court kind of a bird's eye view of domestic violence in Kentucky and in the region. Give our listeners an idea that, this is one of the things that kind of, one of these issues that kind of simmers under the surface that doesn't always come up in casual conversation, and it's kind of often out of sight, out of mind, until somebody very close to home is a victim.
Exactly. I mean, domestic violence is not a discussion that you have at your local diner. It's just not. Domestic violence has always appeared to be a family secret, and things that that you don't talk about outside the home to anyone. People often wonder, who are the actual victims of domestic violence? Well, I'm here to tell you that a domestic violence victim can look like you. It can look like me. Domestic violence does not discriminate. It doesn't care about your race, gender, your economic status. It just doesn't care. It goes across the board, and anyone can be a victim of domestic violence. Domestic violence is not only physical. A lot of times people think, well, if I'm not being hit or that individual is not being hit, then they're not in a domestic situation. So far from the truth. Domestic violence can be verbal, it can be mental, it could be physical, it could be sexual, and now they've added digital to the list because a lot of times victims are victimized over text, over Instagram, over Snapchat, just, using Facebook, if people are still using Facebook, putting, inappropriate pictures out of people, trying to dehumanize them, for lack of a better word, into coming back into the fold with the perpetrator. And I said earlier to Mr. Brooks and Ms. Bradford that I'll be speaking in terms of men and women because 80% of all victims of domestic violence are women. So that would make 80% of all perpetrators men. Now, men are victims of domestic violence as well, but men are less likely to report due to what society says a man should look like, should act like, should actually be. So in our society, men are supposed to be strong. They should never cry. They're in charge of everything. So if we have a male victim that his perpetrator happens to be a woman, a lot of people ostracize them because maybe he is 6'3" and maybe she is 5'3", and he comes into a facility to try to get help and he has a black eye and he tells, his story, and then sometimes he's met with comments like, man, I can't believe you let a girl hit you. She gave you a black eye. I mean, what did you do? Bend down and let her hit you? And those things hurt people. Words hurt people. Our tongues are our worst enemies, for real. So when you're a victim of domestic violence and you're a male, you don't want to hear that. And so they sort of shy away from any type of help because one person has said it. Maybe they think that everybody else feels that way, and they'll just go on back into their situation.
Recently, I was reading an article that was talking about the harm done to children.
Yes.
Not physically, but mentally, with hearing and seeing these acts of violence, and even babies who hear all this arguments, and that it really affects them, that they are victims also.
Children are victims of domestic violence as well, because if you grow up in a home where domestic violence is prevalent, two things are going to happen. Either for the young boys, they're either going to be perpetrators of domestic violence, or they're going to get as far away from that situation as they possibly can. Young ladies, on the other hand, they often mirror the male in their home, whether it's positive behavior or negative behavior in their choice for a mate. And we had this big surge a few years ago about kids in school, especially elementary school kids, being bullies, boys being bullies. And they, were trying to figure out what's going on. Well, at least 37.5% of all little boys that participate in bullying at school come from homes where domestic violence is prevalent. And it makes sense, because if you are in a home and your male figure is cursing and fighting and taking things and just being mean, and he gets what he wants in the end from his victim, why not go to your local playground and take all the swings and dare anybody to touch him? Because you're looking for that same result, because we're products of our environment.
Modeling the behavior that's observed.
Exactly. Exactly. And I know in fiscal court, Mr. Brooks, I was talking about Kentucky and where we rank as far as domestic violence is concerned. And it's very alarming. And us Kentuckians, we always want to be first. We want to be first in basketball. I mean, most definitely basketball.
Yeah.
And, the football programs are coming up. And, it's important to be first. But we should be ashamed to be first out of all the union in domestic violence. And Kentucky ranks number 1 in domestic violence out of all the states in the union.
I found that a really shocking
Oh, that
statistic.
is shocking.
But, again, domestic violence is something that you might read about it a little bit, but it's one of those things, it's not something we read about or talk about often.
Right.
And unless there's a news story or something that puts statistics in front of us, we
Right.
don't go seeking that information in most cases.
No,
Or
and
unless you see a murder.
right, that, a domestic homicide, women between the ages of 18 and 25 lead America in homicides due to domestic violence. Domestic violence, car accidents are only second to domestic violence.
Can you say that again?
Which part? The whole part?
The women,
18 to 25-year-old
Okay.
women lead in domestic homicides.
Okay.
And domestic homicides are they're first, and then car accidents are second.
yes. Okay.
Death by accident. So
So a woman 18 to 25 is a lot more likely to be abused than she is to be
more likely to be a homicide victim due to
homicide
domestic violence.
Right, okay.
Yes.
And my
That's
wife-
scary.
Yes, it is.
My wife often says that pregnant women are often at a higher risk of being abused too, and that's just her observation. But I think, and you said that people that leave domestic violence situations have stayed in that situation for an extended length of time, and I guess it's will often return. Is that right?
Yes. Victims normally stay in their situation and attempt to leave between 7 and 12 times. The 12th times, then that's statistically, that is not everyone.
Right.
Some people, they have an incident and they're out. They're not going to put up with that behavior, and they leave and they do not return. Other people, just like with anything else in life, sometimes certain things take longer for individuals to wrap their brain around before they're able and willing to do something about it. But victims of domestic violence, oftentimes people say, well, why don't you just leave? Well, why don't you just stay? And we can always say what we will do. Well, I wouldn't take that, and I'd be out of there in a minute. But until we end that situation, you don't know exactly what you're going to do.
And they're more in danger in that situation when they attempt to leave many times.
The final time is the most dangerous time, because the perpetrator has actually really figured out that, there's no more chances. This is really it. And they try to prevent the victim from leaving. And that's when, a majority of the victims, they lose their lives on that final time that they're trying to get out. And with people that I meet with, that I do education with, I tell them, you don't have to stay in that situation, and I will support you in the choices that you make. But if you decide that you're going to leave, Don't leave while he's laying on the couch or she's laying on the couch or cooking breakfast and packing up all these bags and taking all the important papers and stuff. That puts you in danger. You have to think it through. Start putting things away. See if you cannot leave a bag, if you have to have a bag, at a friend's house. And stuff is not important. Our society is so wrapped around stuff. We love cars, we love houses, we love couches, we love clothing. You can get all those things again. You cannot get another you. So you can leave those things behind. And so many people are like, well, I worked hard for that. I understand that. But life is a one-shot deal. So what's most important here? Is that, pretty flowered couch more important than your life? No, it's not.
Right.
Because they just didn't make that one when they manufactured it.
Right. Or the safety of your children if you've got children.
Exactly. And, for kids, they love both their parents.
Sure.
They love both their parents, and sometimes they see what goes on, but they try to put that in the back of their mind and just hope that, it's not going to happen again. But getting back to why people don't leave. A lot of times it's financial. The victim has not been allowed to work by the perpetrator. There might be transportation issues. There could be the issue of the perpetrator seeing that the tide is changing and the victim is getting tired and has vocalized that they want to leave, and they say things like, well, if you try to leave, I'll kill myself. If you try to leave, I'm going to kill your family. If you try to leave, I am going to kill the kids. I'm going to kill you, and then I'm going to kill myself. So if people tell you that constantly, you become a believer. You become a believer. So many times victims are truly afraid to get out of the situation. And it goes back to that 7 to 12 times, because normally when people do leave, they go to a family member, they go to a friend, and these people are reaching out trying to help them. And once you tell your family or your friend about the treatment that you have been receiving from your spouse or your paramour, they become angry at that person for you. And then you decide as the victim that you're going to go back to this individual. Well, that leaves your friends and family dealing with their emotions about this individual that has victimized you, and they're not happy. So eventually they quit trying to help, even though this person is leaving all these many times. Some people tell them, well, don't come here with that because, you went back X amount of times, and I just, I can't have that. I can't handle that. We don't want to lose you, but, you keep going back into that situation. So then that puffs up the perpetrator and lends them to saying things like that, like your family doesn't care anything about you, your friends don't care anything about you, you're lucky that I care anything about you, I'm the only person that will allow you to stay here. So it's just a vicious cycle. It really and truly is.
Well, talk to us a bit about, I know we were talking earlier about the facility that is in E-Town that is for all of the victims in the ad district.
Yes, Spring Haven, we actually have a brick and mortar facility. It's a home. It's not a facility. It's not a shelter. I said earlier that I wish that we could find another word for the word shelter, because when you say shelter to just everyday people, they come with the mindset that it's dark and dingy and moldy, and there's just rows and rows of cots, some things that people have seen on TV, and that is so far from the truth for Spring Haven. We are a temporary home away from home. We are a temporary shelter, whatever temporary looks like for the people that we serve. We have had people come in and stay 5 minutes. We've had people stay 18 months. It just depends on the individual and the needs that they have. So we have what we call a single side for single individuals that don't have children or were not able to bring their children, or maybe their children are in state custody. I mean, it's so many reasons. And then we have a family side. And our family side is for men and women who have children and they are victims of domestic violence and they did not feel safe in their own environment. And so it's like dorm living. We have suite style family rooms with the full bath in between. Also at Spring Haven, we're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So anyone that is in a domestic situation can give us a call. A lot of times people call and they just want information. They don't want to give their name. They don't have to. They just want information. And I've been with Spring Haven for 23 years, so when I'm in the direct service office and answering the phone, I can pretty much tell that you just didn't find our number by happenstance, that either you or someone very close to you is in a domestic situation and you're trying to figure things out, and that is fine because we are there for that. And then if someone feels unsafe in their space due to domestic violence, then we have a phone assessment process for actually getting into the shelter. So we're all trained and qualified, to ask those questions and try to help someone. Not everyone that's in a domestic situation wants to leave at that time. Not everyone that's in a domestic situation really is in need of shelter.
Right.
So we have outreach services as well. I'm a victims advocate for Hardin and Nelson County, where we provide advocacy and support in district court here in Nelson and family court in Hardin for victims of domestic violence that are seeking an emergency protective order and having that go into a domestic violence order for further protection.
All right. Well, Shonna, we need to take a commercial break.
Okay.
You're listening to Bradford and Brooks and our very special guest, Shonna Sheckles. We're talking about Spring Haven domestic violence and all the services. And you seem to wear a lot of hats, Shonna, as far as the work you do and where you do it.
Yes. Yes.
Anyway, we will be back with more with Shonna in just a few minutes, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back. All right, you're back with Bradford and Brooks. Jim Brooks and Margie Bradford with you on this overcast. I don't think it's raining out there now, though, so that's always an improvement, Margie.
Yep.
If it's not raining. Trying to keep up with my yard at home, and it's just about to the point I need to get the hay baler out. But I think I'm not alone in that category.
I look forward to going by and seeing that.
Well, I guess I can donate the hay to my neighbor's bulls, so maybe that's what I'll have to do. Or maybe I can just open the gate and let them
Well, that's even better. Even better.
My wife threatens to buy a goat sometimes because I don't keep up with it very well. All right, we're back with our very special guest, Shonna Sheckles, and we've been talking the Spring Haven Domestic Violence Shelter. And, Shonna, you made a good observation. Shelter kind of implies, when we think of shelter in my mind, I think about Hurricane Katrina and the temporary shelters that were set up, to house victims there. But really, the domestic violence shelter is anything but some sort of tent city.
Exactly. Exactly. It's our home. It's our home for our victims, for them to come and find themselves and to blossom into survivors. Mm-hmm. So that is very important to us. And people say, well, what do you actually have there? Well, we have everything in our home that you have in yours. We have a dining room where the families can sit together and eat. We have an industrial-sized kitchen so that, the clients can cook. Everything at Spring Haven is free. We are funded through state and federal grants, along with our Tri-County United Way, Central Kentucky United Way. So we have the funds to help people help themselves. We have our kids, I guess a couple of weeks ago, they all got the little iPads. So they all have little iPads that they can use while they're there at shelter. That's the plan, but I really don't see taking an iPad away from a 5-year-old up on their mother leaving. So they're probably going to go, and we're probably just going to have to get some more, which is fine. And we operate on family values. Things that a lot of the victims have, they were probably instilled in them growing up, but in their relationships have been lost along the way.
In addition to having the shelter, what other services, I'm thinking like counseling and, because coming out of an abusive situation, that's, that has to work on you mentally and emotionally, and trying to pull yourself and your life back together and be there for your children.
It's a lot.
It's a big plateful.
Yes, it is. And we actually at Spring Haven, we have a therapist that is on site where our I hate to call people victims when they're trying to go into survivors. So the in-between, they are our clients. They're able to make an appointment with her and do psychological work with her, which has been very beneficial for them. And then people that we work with in our outreach services, because we have offices in all of the counties. There's victim advocates in all of the Lincoln Triad District counties. And so we're able to do education on domestic violence with them. So that has really, really been helpful. We have a housing director where if people are in shelter, she's able to help them find suitable and affordable housing for their situation, because shelter is temporary and people really need to be able to take their life back and get on with their life, however their life looks to them.
Right.
And we always tell our clients, you don't have to do anything to please me, because I'm living the way that I want to live. So what you have to do is please yourself, and we will meet you where you're at. And not all the time, when I've worked with a client and they tell me that I've decided to go back, yes, my insides drop, because I know everything that you've told me that you've been through, but I do tell them, I will support you in that decision, but if you ever need our services again, please don't hesitate to call, because there's not a time stamp on the number of times that you can come to Spring Haven. There's not a time stamp on a number of times that I can meet with you and do education with you with domestic violence.
And I think one of the things that I'm sure that you all have had to deal with is client safety, because if they're in a position where they want to leave, more than likely there's been violence and threats of violence that may, and there may be a concern that the perpetrator may want to follow them to wherever they go. Like for example, if they go to a family member's house, well, the perpetrator may be able to quickly figure out what family member you decided to go to.
Right.
But the shelter is certainly a safe place.
Yes, it is. And we have a fence, and that's probably a false sense of protection, but we have one. And it is, you have to have a code to get in. You have to call up on our code pad to announce who you are and to come in. We have cameras all over our property. We have cameras throughout the shelter. We just don't have them they're all in the common areas, and they're not in the bedrooms. So we try to keep people as safe as we possibly can, but they're not in prison, so they can come and go as they please. The only thing that we ask is that, you possibly turn the locator off on your phone so that your whereabouts cannot be identified. We're close to the Elizabethtown Police Department, so it takes them really less than a minute and a half at best to get to us. So if there's something suspicious going on, we can immediately call the police, and they come. So we've had, perpetrators try to act like that, they're other people and all that before. They do try us, but as far as any incidents to date where a perpetrator has been able to get into the shelter, none of that has ever happened. So we, our victims' safety is important. The safety of our staff is important, but then people need to be able to get on with their lives as well and be left alone.
All right. Now, you're not a newcomer to being an advocate for victims of domestic violence, are you?
No, I'm not.
But you have a passion for this work that shows.
Yes, I do.
And I would have to assume that passion is what keeps you going.
It does. It does. I have always been a counselor or an advocate of some sort, and I really believe that I inherited that from my mother because she was always, a community icon, a community partner, and my sister and I lived that, being with her. So I think that it sort of kind of rubbed off on me, and it's not a bad thing.
No.
It's not a bad thing. I'm always happy to be able to help people, but with victims of domestic violence, what drives me and what has kept me in this position and with Spring Haven for 23 years is being that temporary voice for a person that has lost their voice. I'm able to stand up with them and, if need be, for them, because I can be assertive at times. Believe that. Yeah. And so I just feel like that I need to help that person that is just not quite there to be able to help themselves due to the trauma that has been inflicted upon them due to domestic violence. And if I know, I'm going to have to retire someday, but if I ever lose that passion, then I will immediately pass that baton on to someone else that feels the same way that I do, so that we can keep on marching to help people that just cannot help themselves in that moment.
All right. Now, I assume that you probably interface with the area police agencies.
Yes, I do.
And we had Olivia
Rayleigh.
Rayleigh on our show with what's her dog's name? I forget.
Her daughter's name.
Her dog's name.
Maverick. Oh yeah.
And
named after.
And she is a tremendous asset to the entire community.
Yes, she is.
And I'll have to give the city of Bardstown and Chief Cressy tremendous kudos, because hiring somebody with a social work background, that's been discussed in the past with large police agencies, and to hear little old Bardstown moves on that and doesn't sit by and watch other communities. And she's been a tremendous help serving, particularly homeless, et
and
she
helped
knows,
to diffuse situations.
Right, and she's and probably more importantly for the situations that she has to deal with, she knows the resources.
Exactly.
And so, she knows about the domestic violence, the Spring Haven, et cetera. But, not all communities are as forward-thinking, I think, too.
Right, and she is an asset to the community, and my hat is always off to Chief K, Miss Kimberly, as I call her, and to Raymond Penaroa, because anytime I have a situation, they take care of it. If we have a victim that wants out of their situation and they don't have transportation, the city of Bardstown police officers, I can't tell you the number of times that I've called and said, we need a ride. And they are right there to take that person, their stuff. They make them feel comfortable on the
Great.
ride.
That's wonderful.
If we cannot get them there because, there's other things going on, the sheriff's department has taken them to the Hardin County line. The Hardin County Sheriff's Department has picked them up and taken them on to shelter. So I cannot say anything but great things about our police agencies here in Nelson County. Not everybody in some of these other rural counties are as fortunate because they are very, very compassionate about victimization and victims of domestic violence as a whole. They allow me to come in and do training with their officers. A lot of times police agencies don't do that. They want to do that, that 8-hour video and let that be it. But our agencies are more on a personal level. They know that they can call me, and if they have someone out to the police department that they feel like that really needs to talk to an advocate, they'll call me. I'll come out. Yeah, I'm really Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5. But domestic violence normally happens in the evening, and so if they need me, they know that they can call me and that I will come. So I love working with them.
If you could leave a message with our audience, someone in the audience who is suffering from domestic violence, what would it be?
Okay, I got one more thing to say, and I'll say that too. Judge Kelly is excellent with EPO DVO court. He does not cut people off. He treats them like they are humans, and he gets the job done. And I adore him and Julie, his staff, because they're always willing to help. Someone doesn't show up for court, he will call. He will have her call to make sure that they're okay. And I appreciate it. It's so much easier to work with people that care as much as you do.
Yeah.
So, but if I could leave anything, domestic violence is prevalent in the world that we live in today, in the county that we live in today, in the city that we live in today, but there is help. You don't have to stay. The only thing that you need to do is reach out. We can't help you if we don't know that you need help. And I can promise you, if you reach out, everything that you say is confidential. We don't try to go back behind people and see if it's the truth or not the truth, because in that moment, it's their truth. The only two things that are off the table, if you're suicidal and homicidal, I'll have to bring somebody else in. Those are the only two things. And at Springhaven, we are here to help you. So if you're in a domestic situation, you know someone in a domestic situation, we're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can call us at 270-769-1234. That's to the help and information line. And that number again is 270-769-1234. We are there to help you.
All right. Well, that's got us just about down to the wire, Shonna.
Okay.
I don't know. Kudos for the work you do and the work
Thank you.
you've done all these years.
Thank you.
And for bringing a passion and concern to victims of domestic violence.
Thank you.
And you are truly an asset to our community.
I appreciate
and
that.
probably not one everybody thinks about, but domestic violence, again, one of those issues that it really doesn't really get discussed until it hits very close to home.
That's right. That is right.
All right. Well, Margie, we're just about out of time. Reminder that early voting begins tomorrow at the
Right,
Nelson County Public
exactly.
Library main branch
Right.
from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Yep.
And then on Election Day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., vote at your local precinct
Or the library.
or the Nelson County Public Library Voting Center. And I think that's where my wife will be working on Election Day.
Good.
So that's always a busy place on Election Day.
And our next show will be to cuss and discuss the election.
That's right. We'll be slicing and dicing the primary election on the Wednesday after the election. All right. Well, thanks for listening, and thank you again, Shonna, for being a very special guest for us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll be back next Wednesday. So until then, get out and vote and have a great week.